While our chatbot is already working entirely by sending and receiving messages in a continuous way, there are a couple of things that we should improve for this chat to actually work a little bit more like a chat. The first thing that I want to do is change these couple of view cells so they have some certain margin for two reasons. One, so it is clearer which one is an incoming and which one is an outgoing message. And two, so there is actually some spacing between these cells. Because as we saw in the previous lecture, these cells, as they are displayed inside of the list view, they are together, pretty much as we always see when we have cells inside of a list view. They are one right after the other. So what I will do is in the outgoing view cell, or inside of the frame, I am going to set a margin. Because this is an outgoing view cell, it should probably not display all the way to the left. Because this is outgoing. You can see any chat to notice that this is how chats normally work. They have some spacing to the left when this is an outgoing message. So to the left, I am going to have 32 bits of separation. To the top, I'm going to have 8, and to the left, I'm going to have 0. So this is going to be all the way to the right. Of course, there is some spacing coming directly from the list view. Actually, from the grid in which the list view is, there is that margin, but we're not going to be adding any additional margin. And another 8 to the bottom. And something very similar is going to happen for the incoming, although this is going to be the other way around. It is going to have no margin to the left, another 8 pixels of margin to the top, so eventually they are 16 pixels of separation between one and the other, so 8 pixels to the bottom from one and 8 pixels to the top from the other, always 16 pixels of separation between cells. Then this one is going to have 32 bits of separation to the right, this is incoming, and 8 pixels of separation to the bottom again. And so the next time that we test this out, we should already see this margin being applied, which will make it easier to understand which one is incoming and which one is outgoing. So let's write the same question that we have been using. You can see how there is now some separation to the left in the case of the outgoing message and some separation to the right in the case of the incoming message. So this looks a little bit more like a chat now, and there is also some separation between these cells. Now, what I want you to notice is if I continue to send this message, first I always see the same message here. But notice that when I reach the bottom, I no longer see the messages at the bottom. This is not how normal chat works. So let's go ahead and implement a couple of things in here. And this is entirely part of the view. So what I will do is over here in the view model for the main page, whenever I send the message, so I am creating the message in here and I am sending it. After I have sent this, I need to set the message to be an empty string. So this has already been sent, the message can be empty now. And because this is already binding to this entry, this should update the entry so it is now empty. So let's go ahead and test this small change out. If I write a question and I send it, immediately after that I see this entry displaying an empty string because I have updated the property from which this is binding. And now what I will need is know when the messages observable collection changes, so I change the focus from this list view. So for that, let me go ahead and set a name for this list view. This is going to be the chat list view. And I will have to access the C# file for the main page where I am going to create a main VM variable, which right away is going to be initialized from the resources. In the resources, I have that VM and I can access it as main VM. We have done this before. Now, the view model is going to contain that messages observable collection, which is going to contain a collection changed event. So we can handle this event handler which we know is going to be executed every time the collection changes. Either something was deleted, which would not be the case in our chat, or something was added, which is going to be our case. So let me go ahead and create a variable of, let's call this new message. We know that this is always going to be a new message because there's no way to delete elements right here. So just the new message, and the new message is going to be the latest element inside of the observable collection. So all I have to do is access the count, and of course, because this is 0 based, I have to subtract one value. So basically, I'm just getting the last element inside of the observable collection. And so with the chat list view, I can scroll to that element. So there is a scroll to method that simply asks to which element do we want to scroll. Of course, that is going to be the new message. It is also going to require the scroll to position. So this is going to be nth, and whether or not I want this to be animated. Let's set this to true. And again, this is going to be executed every single time the collection changes. So let's go ahead and test this change. If I now send this message, and let me copy it so I can send it many different times. Okay, we are getting an exception. Okay, this is simply setting that we are not running this on the UI thread for some reason. Let me just grab this call to the scroll to method on the devices, begin invoke on main thread method, so we can actually call this from inside of the main thread, the UI thread. So for some reason this is not running on the UI thread. This absolutely has to run on the main thread, which is the UI thread. So let's just grab this inside of this code and let's try one more time. Make the same question, which is no longer on my clipboard, so let's write it again. And again, let me sure I just copy this so I can make this same question a lot of times, and we no longer see an exception. And if I ever get to the bottom like this, we see how this scrolls to the latest element that we're sending the list. The last message, either the one that we send or the one that we receive. So this works more like a chat platform now. Of course, there are still some things that we may want to add, maybe a different way to display these cells. So there is an image. Of course, for example, set the save area. Although it looks rather well, there is definitely some spacing that we should keep in mind to the sides. But overall, our application is working rather well. Now, just to finish up this lecture, let me go ahead and test this out on Android as well to show you that, of course, the functionality will pretty much be the exact same one. So here is the app up and running, and we see, of course, this is an interface more similar to what we would see on Android, but we can do the exact same thing. Let me also just copy this one, send it. We see pretty much the exact same interface, the same result. And if we keep pasting, eventually we will see these scroll down to the last message. So again, this looks very well on both platforms. We have successfully created this Android UI, the iOS UI. This bot application is complete. Now, that is all for this section. In the next section, we're going to take a look at something that is actually native to each platform. We're going to step away a bit from Xamarin Forms to focus on the Android and iOS projects a bit more. And we're going to learn some platform-specific functionality that is going to help us make better applications. And we're going to focus on how to achieve things that you would normally do on Android Studio and on Xcode to show you that you can, of course, also do this here in Visual Studio with Xamarin.